Today on Sekulow, Nancy Pelosi makes a desperate plea to Joe Biden to remove himself from the race as J.D. Vance unites the RNC.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome to Sekulow, folks, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Again, you'll see this backdrop for me. Still in the hotel, and our team is still on the ground for what will be the most important night of the convention, though there was certainly an important night last night. But what we want to start with, of course, is news reporting that as of last Friday, so think about last Friday. It's almost hard to go back to that time, right? Because that is before President Trump was the attempted assassination, and, of course, before the Republican National Convention, that Nancy Pelosi went to Joe Biden directly and privately and basically told him to get out of the race. And, Will, we've got good reporting on this, that the Pelosi team, it appears, wanted to handle this behind the scenes, but somebody is now leaking this to the press to take it public.
That's right, Jordan. And this CNN headline tells it all. It says Pelosi privately told Biden polls show he cannot win and will take down the House. Biden responded with defensiveness. Now, this reporting is that she had this meeting or phone call with President Biden before she left to go back to California, which would have been over the weekend, and that they have not spoken since. So as reporters try to drill down when this conversation happened, it appears it probably happened last Friday, which would have been obviously before the assassination attempt on President Trump in Pennsylvania that happened on Saturday. And I can imagine that the assessment from the Pelosi camp of the Democrats has grown more concerned after that about President Biden's prospects in November, as you see her close ally in the House about to be Senator from California, Adam Schiff. He came out publicly yesterday and said that Biden needs to step aside from the race and let someone else have a chance at it so they have a better chance of beating Donald Trump in November. We also see this headline this morning from Axios, behind the curtain. Top Dems now believe Biden will exit. There's a lot moving on that point, as we saw last night, what seemed to be, for the first time in a very long time, a united Republican Party as J.D. Vance gave his nomination acceptance speech in Milwaukee, where you are.
I want to hear from folks at 1-800-684-3110. I will tell you, as that speech got going, and we'll, of course, play some of it, I'd love your reaction to it, folks. I know you follow politics pretty closely. You know who J.D. Vance is, probably know about his book and even the movie. But I think last night, by taking center stage and kind of interweaving his personal life with joining the same ticket as Donald Trump's personal life, which a very different background, but rising to these same kind of places is a very American thing. It's something that really only happens in the United States of America. But also, as a veteran, as someone who served in the military, I think, again, it changes the ticket. And I have a feeling that this is even causing more panic amongst Democrats because of how well J.D. Vance is going to appeal within what we call the Rust Belt of the country, which are those states that we did not win in the last election, and so in 2020. So, but did win them in 2016. So I think it's just a very important time for the Republican Party, and of course tonight a major speech. The first time we're going to hear from President Trump. The first time we're going to hear from President Trump since he was shot in the attempted assassination on Saturday in Pennsylvania. Remember, the ACLJ is about to file a FOIA. We're about to file a FOIA right to, again, the Secret Service about the breakdown. The ACLJ is doing that during our Life and Liberty Challenge, where if you donate to the ACLJ at aclj.org, you can go to the homepage or aclj.org/life and liberty. Your donation will be doubled. That's at aclj.org. It's such an important time. And just here at the convention, we've got a big team here that costs money to do. And it's important that we're here, that ministry of presence. Donate today. We're going to get to the bottom of that Secret Service issue. aclj.org. We'll be right back.
questions mount over the president's ability to serve another 4 years.
Operation Dump and Destroy Joe Biden is in full force now.
Pressure may be growing from the most powerful Democrats on Capitol Hill.
Pelosi told the president that polling shows that the president cannot defeat Donald Trump and that he could destroy Democrats' chances of winning the House if he were to continue seeking a second term. Now, we are also told by our sources that the president responded by being defensive about the polling, telling Pelosi he has seen the data polling that shows that he can, in fact, win.
Chuck Schumer also shared recent polling data showing Biden trailing Trump in what two sources familiar with the meeting called a blunt conversation.
California Senate candidate and Congressman Adam Schiff became the highest-profile lawmaker to publicly call on Biden to withdraw Wednesday, saying he has serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You've got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together.
Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi now have all said to him, essentially, there's a potential you're going to lose. We're going to lose dozens of House races, handful of Senate races, and lose total control of Washington. That message has been conveyed. His team knows that. They understand it. They've seen the polling. But he's not going anywhere. There is no plan for him to leave. There is no plan for an alternative schedule at the Democratic National Convention. Wilmington, or his campaign headquarters, as we say, his team essentially says, this has been a bad stretch. We're going to come out of this.
It's as good as all of them basically saying, yes, we did order the code red. And where's Biden on this? Defiant with Lester. It's almost like they're saying we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Welcome back to Sekulow, and I do want to take your calls, 1-800-684-3110. Your thoughts first on the pick of J.D. Vance. And the second question, because I think it's getting more and more likely minute by minute, day by day, as this convention goes on, that Joe Biden may not be at the top of the ticket of this race, which makes the speech tonight interesting. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, about how President Trump will address, obviously, the issues of the last 4 years that have happened to our country and, of course, the world in chaos. But do you spend less time even talking about the administration that you're trying to replace, because that president might not even be on the ballot? So it becomes a very different kind of speech tonight. And I wanted to play this, though, because we also want your thoughts on J.D. Vance. It's a very strategic pick because of where he resonates the most based on his background story and where he got to this far in his life. And he's 39 years old. His family, I thought his wife did a great job last night of introducing him. Don Jr., I thought we heard a very different tone from him, bringing up his daughter as well to give her first speech like this. It's just a different kind of feeling around President Trump. And I think it's because of the emotions people are going through of what happened Saturday. But I do want to play this because we want to focus on J.D. Vance as well as the VP nominee. And one of my favorite moments in his speech last night, let's all watch it.
Our movement is about single moms like mine who struggled with money and addiction but never gave up. And I'm proud to say that tonight my mom is here, 10 years clean and sober. I love you, Mom. And you know, Mom, I was thinking, it'll be 10 years officially in January of 2025. And if President Trump's okay with it, let's have the celebration in the White House.
So again, I think that was extremely powerful from J.D. Vance to personalize an issue like that. I mean, a lot of times people think, oh, these folks who rise to power, have had maybe a perfect life or the silver spoon, and you realize when it comes to J.D. Vance and also talking about those issues, I mean, Will, that resonates with so much of the country right now. The fact that so many have people in their families that are dealing with addiction issues, and of course the fentanyl crisis, which is killing the number one, cause of death among young people in America, to bring his mom there to talk about the fact that she was 10 years sober, to make that so public remark. I think that touched probably millions and millions of Americans who, again, may not have known a lot about J.D. Vance, may have thought, he's some right-wing senator, and he really brought himself, back down to earth to resonate with people.
Well, Jordan, I think it's also important that this is one of the first people in history that is a millennial to be picked for a running mate and not by say one of, he is the very first millennial to be placed on a presidential ticket. And I think a lot of the life experience that so many people in a large voting block will be touched by is the fact that he tied all of the mistakes of the Washington elite throughout his entire life to why he is where he is now and the things that he wants to accomplish. And I think that really resonates when people call him out as a nationalist or a populist or try to use these derogatory terms. It's a individual that many in middle America relate to because they were born in the 80s. They grew up in the 90s. They saw what prosperity in America could be, but they also saw that when the ruling class in Washington, D.C., as he even referenced, make poor decisions, how much it affects the life of people in this country. And I thought that was really powerful. I wanted to play this bite because it's a direct contrast of himself now being the nominee for vice president and the career of Joe Biden. This is bite 6. Let's hear from J.D. Vance.
Joe Biden has been a politician in Washington for longer than I've been alive, 39 years old. Kamala Harris is not much further behind. For half a century, he's been the champion of every major policy initiative to make America weaker and poorer. And in 4 short years, Donald Trump reversed decades of betrayals inflicted by Joe Biden and the rest of the corrupt Washington insiders.
I mean, I think right there, Will, again, we've heard these important statements and important moments from J.D. Vance about, again, the Washington insiders, the difference between the Washington insiders, what they've done to President Trump since he was president, even while he was in office. But you think about even there, though he talked about Joe Biden, of course, being a politician long in Washington, D.C., so a federal elected politician, longer than he has been alive. And of course, that distinction being made, that generation, again, there needs to be some balance there. And I think when you balance Donald Trump and his age with J.D. Vance and his age, the balance is done. And of course, it's easy to see that J.D. Vance is someone who is capable of taking on a role as president if they so needed to at any time. And remember, because this is going to be a 4-year presidency without the option of running again if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance do win. And I think if the election were today and Joe Biden was the nominee, they would almost 100%. I don't see any way of them losing that race. But months is a lot of time in politics. And remember, we now know that Nancy Pelosi and more of the top leadership of the Democrat Party, like Chuck Schumer, are calling on Joe Biden to get out of the race. I mean, there are reports, Will, that could happen as early as this weekend, and then everything changes again. The gunshot, the attempted assassination, that changed everything. I think the Hunter Biden laptop and all that being real was important for people to start thinking about, well, who is this Biden family? But if Joe Biden announces that he is not going to be on the ticket, it also raises questions about whether or not he should even be president right now. And I think, again, the Democrats better have everything ready to go for this, or else it leads to complete political chaos.
Well, Jordan, that also brings up the point of this has been the wildest political season maybe in American history when you take into account all the lawfare that we've seen, a failed assassination attempt, a party revolting against the sitting president. I mean, these are, if you had one of these stories in an election cycle, you would say this is a wild election cycle. But instead, it just seems like it never dies down. And as you mentioned, I think The Economist has a forecast that they do 1,000 polls and they run a simulation. And right now they have J.D. Vance and President Trump have a 77% chance of prevailing. Now, that's based off of current knowledge of what's happening today. We're only in July. There are a lot of months before the election where things could change, whether it be a candidate at the top of the ticket or whether it be some sort of October surprise, which I couldn't even fathom what would register in polls at this point of what an October surprise would be. That really it's an unprecedented election. I know that that's a buzzword in Washington and in the media was saying unprecedented, but really, Jordan, you've followed politics, worked in politics for your entire career. Have you seen anything like this?
No, I mean, I think the only one that was like this in any way, I mean, was kind of in the chaos post-election was, of course, President Trump versus Biden, but that was post really the election and the votes coming in late and election integrity issues and COVID voting. And, of course, maybe George W. Bush, where you had versus Al Gore and the legal issues there. But those were legal issues. No one had been shot, a candidate. And you didn't have the current president at the time thinking that they may not have it in them, the way they could announce this, to running for a second term. But then the question is, what about all these months in between? Are you going to say, well, it's just too much for me to campaign and run the country, so I'm going to focus on running the country? Or else it's like the cabinet is almost forcing their hand to invoke the 25th Amendment if he doesn't step down, which then puts Harris as president and makes it that much tougher, unless there's deals being made that we don't know about as we speak, to replace her with someone else at the Democrat Party. And also, what happens with all those fundraising dollars, Will? Right now on the FEC laws, it's the Biden, even if they're okay with it, they can't assign all of that over to a new candidate. I think maybe if Harris remains on the ticket, there might be some kind of loophole there. I'm not sure. It's up to them to figure that out. I'm not going to figure it out for them, make it easier. But as of today, it feels like Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate that Donald Trump is running against, that he'll be running against his policies, but not the man himself. And we want to take your calls, of course, on that at 1-800-684-3110, talking J.D. Vance, but also with this speech night from President Trump. Obviously, so many big issues at stake there. The first time he really addresses the nation since his attempted assassination. And we are working to get to the bottom of that at the ACLJ, filing a FOIA today to the Secret Service to get the answers about why on earth that happened, so the right people are removed and good policies are put back in.
Tonight is a night of hope, a celebration of what America once was, and with God's grace, what it will soon be again. For decades, that divide between the few with their power and comfort in Washington and the rest of us only widened. From Iraq to Afghanistan, from the financial crisis to the Great Recession, from open borders to stagnating wages, the people who govern this country have failed and failed again. President Trump represents America's last best hope to restore what, if lost, may never be found again. A country where a working-class boy born far from the halls of power can stand on this stage as the next vice president of the United States of America. And if this country is going to thrive, our leaders have to remember that America is a nation and its citizens deserve leaders who put its interests first. Never forget that the reason why this united Republican Party exists, why we do this, why we care about those great ideas and that great history, is that we want this nation to thrive for centuries to come. Now, I pledge to every American, no matter your party, I will give you everything I have to serve you and to make this country a place where every dream you have for yourself, your family, and your country will be possible once again. And I promise you one more thing. To the people of Middletown, Ohio, and all the forgotten communities in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and every corner of our nation, I promise you this: I will be a vice president who never forgets where he came from. And every single day for the next 4 years, when I walk into that White House to help President Trump, I will be doing it for you, for your family, for your future, and for this great country. Thank you. God bless all of you, and God bless our great country.
back to Sekulow. We're about to get right to your phone calls, and we're talking about really three issues today on the broadcast. Two, of course, very intertwined. One is J.D. Vance's speech last night. You knew he was going to be the vice presidential nominee for President Trump to join President Trump then on the campaign trail as well, but you hadn't heard his kind of speech and pitch to the American people. Now, if you're involved in politics, you've seen J.D. Vance in a lot of media, but maybe didn't know as much about his family. Maybe you knew about his personal life because of the book that he wrote, Hillbilly Elegy, and that even becoming a movie that I'm sure is a lot of people are watching, and a lot of people are reading that book right now. But I think it was interesting how J.D. Vance told us what we won't be doing in Washington, D.C. anymore, what is going to stop in Washington, because it seems like when we hear from the left, it's never about what can we cut out to make the system better. It's always about we need to add more and more of your tax money to the system. That's the real problem. That's why it's not working for you. It's working for you because we're not taxing people enough. Take a listen to J.D. Vance where he says, no, it's the opposite of that. Take a listen.
President Trump's vision is so simple and yet so powerful. We're done, ladies and gentlemen, catering to Wall Street. We'll commit to the working man. We're done importing foreign labor. We're going to fight for American citizens and their good jobs and their good wages. We're done buying energy from countries that hate us. We're going to get it right here from American workers in Pennsylvania and Ohio and across the country. We're done sacrificing supply chains to unlimited global trade, and we're going to stamp more and more products with that beautiful label, made in the USA. We're going to build factories again, put people to work making real products for American families made with the hands of American workers.
I mean, that again, it ushered in really, I think it's MAGA plus, Will. I think you're starting to see the long-term kind of how this change in the Republican Party, a move towards populism, because so many of us as conservatives not only now have a seat at the table, but are controlling the table. I mean, the delegates here, of course, the majority of delegates were by far, 90+% are Donald Trump delegates before they were even released by Nikki Haley or some of the other candidates. So, this is a very unique moment for the Republican Party. This is not the same party 20 years ago. It's some of the same people, but their thoughts and views of the world. I think what happened, Will, is they stopped just taking whatever Washington told them, those top-level bureaucrats at the State Department or even in the intelligence community. They've stopped just taking their word as honest and true because of Crossfire Hurricane, because of what happened with Donald Trump and the Russia hoax and Mueller and the impeachment over phone calls. So now even more traditional Republicans have kind of signed on to this agenda that we have got to continue to drain this swamp, and that we can no longer just trust this bureaucracy when they come and tell us, oh, this is what we should do or this is what we should not do.
Well, Jordan, I think that this also debunks the tired narrative that the Democrats always try to push, that Republicans only care about the top 1%. They only want tax cuts for the rich.
Right.
And that's not been the case. That's the fallacy and the lie that the left will tell about conservatism. But in reality, what you're seeing is someone who can articulate it very well, is very relatable to our generation as he's a peer in age of you and me. No, this is what conservatism is. We're tired of big corporate interests connected to the government interest in the bureaucrats and just depleting the resources of the American worker. Because actually the Republican Party is about small business. It's about the entrepreneur. Right. It is about the middle class receiving tax breaks so they're not taxed to death and can grow a business. Yes, we want capitalism to flourish in our country, but we're not only concerned about Wall Street and their connections with the White House and how that can work out better for huge businesses. That's the opposite. We want all businesses and the economy to flourish, and that includes most importantly, small businesses and entrepreneurs and working class people, that they can get ahead. And under the failed Democrat policies, that's impossible right now. It is literally impossible with the inflation rates, the cost of housing, the cost of living, the cost of energy for anyone to get ahead unless you are the billionaire class. So the only thing that the Democrats have done is bolstered the strength and stranglehold on the economy that billionaires have. They lie and say it's Republicans. It's not true.
I want to go to the phones, and folks, we want to take your calls, 1-800-684-3110. I think first question, obviously, how you feel about J.D. Vance after his speech last night and his remarks. Did something that we haven't played yet maybe, or something that we did play, really, something that you remember today now that you've seen the speech? But the second question, and I really do want your honest opinions. There's no wrong or right answers here because we're in this kind of uncharted territory. Do you believe Joe Biden is going to be the nominee for the Democrat Party that President Trump faces? Because think about how that impacts President Trump's remarks tonight here in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention, that are not just remarks, of course, to folks who are in at this convention, but are remarks to, I think, because it's his first time speaking since the attempted assassination, this will be watched around the world. So give us a call. Does Joe Biden remain the Democrat Party's nominee by the DNC, which is mid-August? Let's go to the phones to Elizabeth first in, I think it's New Hampshire. Elizabeth, you're on the air.
Thank you very much. The first answer to your question is I was so inspired when I listened to J.D. Vance speak last night, especially when he was talking about family, about his burial plot. But the 2 points I'd really like to make in regards to this first answer is to let you know that when he was talking about his grandmother, you know, how Mima was just right there in his face and how precious he was. But he's a family man. He loves being a husband. He loves being a father. And so to the children, when he knew they'd probably be watching, he says, okay, kids, now get your butts in bed. That was so endearing. And then the thing with his mom, when he said, okay, Mom, you're going to be sober for 10 years in January. Let's celebrate this in the White House. Well, hot spit. I thought that was just wonderful. And then the second thing, of course not. Joe Biden cannot be president. But you know what? I think, Jordan, Will, the thing is many of us are praying. We're fervently praying. And by standing with you as a champion, I just can't endorse any better. Everybody who's listening, get on the wagon, get on us, support ACLJ. But the most important thing, Jordan and Will, is that people are united in prayer, and they both are godly people. And it makes me think of Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path.
Elizabeth, I think, again, all of your remarks were right on. And the fact is, I think, Will, the fact that people are saying now they don't believe it will be Joe Biden, that there's been this moment that has kind of changed the party since Saturday. I'm feeling it. I'm seeing it here in Milwaukee. We're going to continue to take your calls at 1-800-684-3110 for the second half hour of Sekulow. So don't go away. 1-800-684-3110 and support the work of the ACLJ. Our Life and Liberty Drive continues. We are sending a FOIA today to the Secret Service to get to the bottom of that attempted assassination. Donate today at ACLJ.org. At ACLJ.org.
Last summer, we launched our first ever ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. We never could have imagined how much you, our ACLJ members and ACLJ champions, would exceed our expectations, and we can't thank you enough. We'd love to tell you that 1 year later, threats to life and liberty are no more. Sadly, the radical left is relentlessly doing everything it can to destroy the very foundations of this great nation: life, religious liberty, and the Constitution. The good news is your ACLJ team has not slowed down. We continue to fight in courtrooms across the country, including the Supreme Court, to defend your freedoms and to save innocent babies. And we're proud to announce the return of the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Right now, your tax-deductible gift will be doubled, dollar for dollar, doubling your impact to defend your freedoms and help save innocent lives. Go to ACLJ.org right now and join us in this fight.
keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
All right, folks, welcome back to Sekulow. So we've asked you to call in, and we are going to take your calls at 1-800-684-3110. We're going to update on a couple of issues in this second half hour. Former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo is going to be joining us and on the show later in the broadcast. And we are also going to be talking to Jeff Balaban out of our office in Jerusalem. So you don't want to miss that coming up on the show. But we're also going to hear from you. Will, let's go back to the phones. We asked people that question about, one, what did they think about J.D. Vance, if they want to talk about that? Or two, because of the fact that Nancy Pelosi, we know now, as well as Chuck Schumer and Adam Schiff, the list keeps going on, have been going to Biden even before the shooting Saturday, telling him to get out of the race. So the Democrats on Capitol Hill have relaunched, and the party will have relaunched the campaign to remove Joe Biden, which to me means they probably have figured out the money situation and who they want as the nominee. I mean, I don't think you'd be pushing this hard this late if you couldn't figure those two things out.
That's right. We'll go to a call here in a moment, but I agree with you, Jordan. I think that we thought if he could survive at first the weekend after the debate, maybe he was safe, but it kept going. And then we thought maybe if he survives the July 4th holiday, he'll be safe. But he kept this whole cry to get him out kept going and going. And then we thought, okay, maybe after a failed assassination attempt, the Democrats will be like, okay, we just need to stop with the infighting and we need to also get our party in order. But no, what you're seeing is a redoubled effort, and even it growing within the leadership of the Democrat Party to try and get Joe Biden to step aside. He still seems like he is stuck in his resolve to stay the nominee, but you're also starting to see some cracks in that resolve as he gave an answer in an interview that if I have a medical diagnosis that would hinder me from continuing going, maybe then I'll do it. And also you're seeing reports out of the New York Times that he's willing to listen now to these arguments instead of just saying, I'm not going to talk to you. But let's go to Linda from Virginia on line 5. Linda, you're on Sekulow.
Hi. Yes, I believe that even if Joe Biden doesn't agree, there might be a mechanism at the convention. Somebody could make a motion, since it seems to be such a big movement to get rid of Joe because he's so incompetent, that basically somebody could make a motion, it could be seconded, and all of the delegates could vote for a list of candidates. And the candidates that have been mentioned, of course, is Kamala Harris. And I don't know that Michelle Obama is interested. I mean, she has not indicated by her behavior in any way. But at the same time, we don't know.
Different though right now, Linda, and maybe just to get your thoughts on this, we now know that it appears the Obama team, that Obama gave the okay to his team to start this movement. So while we have not heard from Michelle Obama directly about her wanting to do this to Joe Biden, I think that's strategic as well, because that would not be the way you'd want to take this on. You'd want Joe Biden to have made this decision, and you try to come in and save the Democrat Party. And I think that's what is different, Linda, is that we know that the Obama team is now pushing to get Joe Biden off the top of the ticket. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a possibility, and that's a smart thing to do for her to be quiet. I kind of think that maybe Obama has been running things through Joe's staff all along. Yes. He has a house in Washington.
A lot of the Obama juniors, Linda, staff are now the directors. So they worked. So they were inside that White House to some extent. I appreciate your phone call and your thoughts, Linda. Sorry for jumping in there, but I did want to note that to people that we know now there's a lot more prominent Democrats out there supporting this idea to remove Joe Biden. Now, like as Linda brought up, are there mechanisms to do it or ways to do it where all this fundraising money can make it into their coffers of the new candidate, or do you have to re-raise the money? Well, here's something we know at the ACLJ. We want to get to the bottom of what happened on Saturday in Pennsylvania. We're filing a FOIA to the Secret Service. Help us donate at aclj.org.
During the brutal October 7th attack on Israel, over 1,200 people were slaughtered. Of them, 45 were American citizens. Where is the outrage?
After October 7th, the world finally saw what I and so many Jewish students across this country experienced almost every day. When I planted 1,200 Israeli and American flags on campus, they were all vandalized within 24 hours. I was harassed by my peers merely for being a Jew and have received countless death threats online. Students and professors have openly called for new Hamas-style attacks against the United States.
President Trump, among his many accomplishments, many of which they said couldn't be done, but he did it. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. They said it couldn't be done, but he weakened the Iranian regime. They said it couldn't be done, but he delivered the historic Abraham Accords, bringing us closer to peace in the Middle East.
Let's elect a president who recognizes that although Harvard and the Ivy Leagues have long abandoned the United States of America, the Jewish people never will, because Jewish values are American values, and American values are Jewish values. God bless the United States. God bless the land of Israel. God bless, protect, and return the American hostages in Gaza now.
All right, welcome back to Sekulow. We are going to be taking your calls, too, on, of course, J.D. Vance and the situation there with his speech. And did you learn more, and are you more excited maybe than you even were, just because you were waiting for that moment last night when he could address the nation and kind of lay out his case to be vice president of the United States? I think he did an excellent job. We'll take your calls on that. We're also getting more and more information about Nancy Pelosi and Democrats at higher levels, even Adam Schiff going public, calling for Joe Biden to get out of the race. But I want to first, I want to go to Jeff Balaban, who is the director of our office in Jerusalem. And Jeff, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was the overall theme that the Republican Party has embraced Israel, embraced Jewish voters in America, and done so very publicly at this convention. And we're going to talk about the different ways they've done that. But it has certainly been an important part of the theme here, is that this party would return to the typical United States policy, Jeff, of having Israel's back.
That's right, Jordan. You know, I am here now in Jerusalem and watching this long distance. And I just want to tell you, when I heard President Trump speak, I was beyond relieved. I was so thankful to God, because you know, there have been elements on the right also. We've talked about this a lot on ACLJ, and we've been trying to portray the truth of what's happening in Israel, because there are even those on the right who are trying to separate out the party from its traditional support for the Jewish people, for Israel, from fighting anti-Semitism. But thank God, with Donald Trump at the lead, the most incredible articulation of support, and you see in the crowd the unbelievable, not just passion and love. I mean, not just support, passion and love for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel. And really, I just say again, just thank God for President Trump's leadership. Thank God for the American people, and right now for the Republican Party.
Yeah. First, I wanted to go to, Jeff, just what the Republican Party also decided to do, which was to highlight one of those families who has a son who is still a hostage. And we played that for people during the break. But to have that family, again, now, long after October 7th, after we brought families to Capitol Hill as well, but to remind Americans again that this, the Biden administration, because of the way that they have kind of turned their back on Israel and just not been clear in their support for Israel. And instead of being like a normal ally, if you have disagreements, if you're a real ally and a friend, you take those disagreements behind closed doors. You don't have them publicly. But this administration has decided to do so publicly at a very tough time for Israel. And yet the Republican Party does the opposite by bringing an Israeli family on stage to talk about their son, who they believe is still alive and a hostage for over 258 days inside Hamas-controlled Gaza.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's if nothing else, we're talking about 45 Americans were slaughtered on October 7th. And there remain, as far as we know, 8 American hostages still being held by Hamas. And Joe Biden has been in the way and tried to stop Israel from pursuing what it needs to do. We know that they put incredible pressure on Israel not to go into Rafah, right? Not to go there, with all kinds of claims of damage that it would do. In the meantime, they did masterful work, and they extracted hostages alive after over 200 days. It was stunning. And so this is the idea that we'd move. And again, and we've talked about this often, Jordan, the policies that Biden has put in place before October 7th actually clearly triggered this kind of October 7th atrocity, because it triggered massive terrorism, massive anti-Semitism. But it comes on the heels of the Trump years. We had the exact opposite, where we had peace breaking out in the Middle East. We had the best years possible for the Middle East, for Israel, and stability for the world, and normalization with its Arab allies and neighbors, and that just disappeared. And we're coming to a World War III. It could not be more different. And showing that the support for the hostage families, showing support for understanding for the situation in Israel. And by the way, J.D. Vance, who is known, for example, as they call an isolationist, and people thought that maybe he wouldn't be on the side. He understands and made very clear, this is not support for Ukraine. This is support for Israel, which is in America's interest. The fight for Israel is the fight for America. We just had an example yesterday. They reported that Israel's technology took out some very dangerous Iranian assets that could have been used against America. This is mutually assured strength. And that's what we need. And both J.D. Vance and President Trump are leading the ticket with that message.
Jeff, one thing that struck me as notable, because I fear, and I know for certain, that it's not something we'll see at the DNC. And it's something that should unite Americans. It should unite Americans that anti-Semitism is vile, it's disgusting, and has no place in America. And we got to hear from a student, Shabbos Kestenbaum, who's a Harvard student. He's Orthodox, and was able to tell his story about, now being a plaintiff against Harvard for failing to protect Jewish students at Harvard. I loved that the RNC made it a point to put this story in there and to showcase that the Republican Party is the party that will fight against anti-Semitism, that will let these voices be heard when the media and when the left tries to silence them. What was your takeaway from that moment?
No, I think that's exactly right. And, this is exactly the kind of work that ACLJ has been doing for years, way before October 7th and the huge surge that's overwhelming everybody with how many cases there are. And again, thank God that the Republicans have been in control of the House, because if it weren't for the chairman of education, if it weren't for Virginia Fox digging into what's going on at universities, they'd just be hiding. The Democrats aren't going after them, but the Republican Party has actually very much gone after them. And thanks again to something we worked on during the Trump years and the fact that the Civil Rights Act does protect Jewish students on campus, there's some relief. We can now go after the universities. And so it was amazing and wonderful and heartening to see that the Republican Party did highlight Shabbos Kestenbaum and his story, because, the president of Harvard made it sound like it wasn't such a big deal. And, she didn't know, it depended on the context, that when you called for genocide, it was a problem. But he's reporting that, in fact, on the ground in Harvard, if you're a student and you're faculty and you're identifiably Jewish, they make your life miserable. They attack you. It's physically violent. It's abusive. And it's been that way on her watch. And so, yes, highlighting this is a way we capture America. And going back to Donald Trump, he made the point when he spoke that those who chant death to Israel also chant death to America. This is one fight for one truth.
Jeff, one final point as well is something you drew my attention to, a vote that happened in the Knesset in Israel. And I think it ties in. It was about a Palestinian state. And one thing that we've seen is that the Biden administration has repeatedly used the opportunity of the war in Gaza as the result of the terrorist attack from Hamas to try to push forward further endanger Israel and push forward. Now is the time for a two-state solution, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state, a Jewish state. What happened in Israel in this Knesset vote, as well as what is the impact based off of tying it to American politics, what you're seeing take place between the two parties here?
Yeah, William, this is hugely significant, and I don't know that people have yet seen this or reporting about this. Yesterday, there was a vote in the Knesset, and factions, because bills are introduced by political factions, not just by individuals. So factions representing over 80 of the 120 members of Knesset voted for, brought this to the table. Not everyone was present, but they're the ones who introduced it. It passed with 68 votes, only 9 opposed, and everyone who voted against this was one of the Arab parties. So you have a consensus among the Jewish parties, among Jews on the street here, that there cannot be a Palestinian state. And this is the third time since October 7th that the Knesset has thought it necessary to pass a vote, specifically because Joe Biden has been leading the charge and the Democrats have been leading the charge to try to reward the atrocities of October 7th with a state for the Palestinians. Well, this one is comprehensive, and it says that Israel actually rejects the idea of a Palestinian state because it is an existential threat to the continued existence of the state of Israel. It is a reward for terrorism. And so, yes, they're doing it now conscious that this is playing out in America, and this is now the divide. It is my hope, it should be all of our hope, that the Democrats hear this and change their approach before their convention. But right now, the choice could not be more clear.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate you joining us from Jerusalem to talk about all of those issues about what's happening here in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention, how that impacts the world, and, of course, the support for Israel. And I just want to tell you, folks, this is a time right now to support the work of the ACLJ. The FOIA that we are working on, they'll be filed today. So if you're listening to this show while we're not live, it likely already has been filed. Write to the Secret Service to get to the bottom of what occurred, what happened on Saturday that led to that attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life and the death of that firefighter protecting his family. I mean, that we can't forget them, just like the party made sure not to forget the 13 U.S. troops who were killed in Afghanistan after Joe Biden said no troops have died in combat on his watch. And that's what he said during the debate, and yet those families were there, and they were endorsing President Trump, not just reminding Joe Biden, but endorsing President Trump, saying they feel like their remaining family members who serve need him back as commander-in-chief. And that those things would not have occurred. We will take your calls. We're also going to be joined by former Secretary of State and ACLJ team member Mike Pompeo. We get back. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org and double your impact today. Make that donation. We need it, folks, to keep on going. aclj.org.
Questions mount over the president's ability to serve another 4 years.
Operation Dump and Destroy Joe Biden is in full force now.
Pressure may be growing from the most powerful Democrats on Capitol Hill.
Pelosi told the president that polling shows that the president cannot defeat Donald Trump and that he could destroy Democrats' chances of winning the House if he were to continue seeking a second term. Now, we are also told by our sources that the president responded by being defensive about the polling, telling Pelosi he has seen the data polling that shows that he can, in fact, win.
Chuck Schumer also shared recent polling data showing Biden trailing Trump in what two sources familiar with the meeting called a blunt conversation.
California Senate candidate and Congressman Adam Schiff became the highest profile lawmaker to publicly call on Biden to withdraw Wednesday, saying he has serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You've got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together.
Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and Nancy Pelosi now have all said to him, essentially, there's a potential you're going to lose. We're going to lose dozens of House races, handful of Senate races, and lose total control of Washington. That message has been conveyed. His team knows that. They understand it. They've seen the polling. But he's not going anywhere. There is no plan for him to leave. There is no plan for an alternative schedule at the Democratic National Convention. Wilmington, or his campaign headquarters, as we say, his team essentially says, this has been a bad stretch. We're going to come out of this.
It's as good as all of them basically saying, yes, we did order the code red. And where's Biden on this? Defiant with Lester. It's almost like they're saying we could do this the easy way or the hard way.
All right, folks, welcome back to Sekulow. Of course, tonight, I think the eyes of the world will be on the speech by President Trump because it will be the first time he makes public remarks since, in a longer speech form addressing the nation and really addressing the world after the attempted assassination on his life and the death of one of those rally attendees who has been honored at this convention and never forgotten at this convention, as well as those troops who were killed in Afghanistan. But you can see how the entire world and world leaders tuning in to this. So I wanted to go to an ACLJ colleague of ours, so I got to spend some time with his wife Susan and my better half Anna this week in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, just to go to that first, your thoughts about tonight. I'll ask you about last night as well, but tonight, this address from Donald Trump, it is to the nation, it is to the Republican delegates, and it is about laying out your ideas for the future. But I think there's a bigger message here to the world.
Jordan, it's been great to be with you here in Milwaukee and to spend some time with Anna. It's fantastic. It's an important set of remarks tonight. It's important because it strikes the moment now, right? 4.5 days after the events in Butler, Pennsylvania, the president is going to speak about America and his vision for how to move this country forward. And the whole world will indeed be watching. But most importantly, I think Americans will see that this is a president who for 4 years was, attacked, impeached. They came after him with everything. And his vision for how to make America great, special, exceptional, all the things we know it to be, remains. And he's going to talk about how that's different from where we have been these last 4 years. And I think he will not only be speaking to Republicans who will be in the convention hall along with you and I, but he'll be speaking to all Americans saying this is a way to build back a nation that is fundamentally based on our Judeo-Christian heritage and putting the American people first.
I know we did a short video together that a lot of people watched about J.D. Vance, Secretary Pompeo, when that announcement was made. But I do want to get your thoughts on his remarks last night, because that was, for a lot of people, the first time they've seen him more than just, for a few minutes on a cable news show or maybe on the floor of the Senate. And even if they had read the book, but kind of putting it all together, what his vision for the country and how that kind of fits in with Donald Trump's vision as his running mate.
I campaigned for who I pray will be Vice President Vance in just a few short months. I campaigned for him in Ohio when he was running for office. I listened to what he talked about last night. He talked about working people all across this country, people who get up every morning, focused on their family, focused on making their community better, doing a good job at work. Those are the people who I watched President Trump for 4 years when I was his CIA Director and Secretary of State. I watched President Trump every day thinking about them too. So I think the pair will make a consistent, strong, demonstrated capacity to improve the way ordinary Americans live. And that's a great thing for everyone in our country.
I want to then go to kind of tonight as well, because you're going to be addressing the convention, and the delegates will all be in the convention hall. Excited to hear that. Can you give our audience a little bit of a preview of where your remarks are going to focus on tonight?
Jordan, I'm so lucky to get this opportunity all 3 nights previously when I've been there. I'm going to spend my time talking about the things that we delivered and how unraveled the world has become and why that matters to Americans, right? Sometimes we think about Taiwan or we think about Ukraine and they seem a long ways off. I'm going to talk about why these things matter to each and every one of us and how important it is that President Trump is elected to be the 47th president so we can create this enhanced prosperity and this enhanced peace for the United States of America. We know how to get it back. We did it for 4 years. It came unraveled, and we can fix it again.
So you heard it here, folks, a little bit of a preview for what you will hear tonight from former Secretary of State and our ACLJ colleague, Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, thanks for taking the time out. I know before your speech today to talk to the ACLJ, the Sekulow audience, we truly appreciate that and are excited to see your remarks tonight. Thank you, Secretary. Folks, let's go right back to the phones. Will, who do we want to go to first?
Yeah, let's go to Karen calling from Texas on line 1. Karen, you're on Sekulow.
Oh, thank you very much for taking my call. First, I want to say I do support the ACLJ monthly, and I would just encourage all the listeners to do the same. Even a small amount will go a long way over the long haul. Yes. My observations, yes, I'm encouraged by J.D. Vance. No, I do not think Biden will be the nominee. I think he'll be removed. My question is, were his previous candidates, the competition in the beginning, were they vetted for being a president? And if they weren't vetted for being a president, then probably no one else has been vetted. And does the Democratic Party have time to vet a candidate? Because I think that takes quite some time.
I mean, I think you're not going to have the normal vetting of going through like the process of going out to the voters necessarily, hosting the town halls, learning about their story, unless it's someone who is very well known. And there are basically 4 or 5 names out there if you want to give them to people. Michelle Obama is always like the top of the list, the dream for the Democrats, but there are others as well who, again, they may not get through the same process, but if they can figure out economically how to utilize the resources that the Democrats have raised for the Biden-Harris ticket, I think they may be well known enough. And then they didn't take any punches either, remember. So they didn't have to take the fight to try and get a nomination. Who else is on that list? Now I think it's growing a little bit.
That's right. So the list that I've seen circulated and that it has even had some internal polling done with Democrats is obviously Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer from the great state of Michigan, the author of the forthcoming book True Gretch, the governor there. She is on that list, as well as J.B. Pritzker, which is a name that many people haven't necessarily heard as much about, but he's the governor of Illinois. He is very hard left on social issues such as abortion and access to abortion. So these are names that are starting to grow as this chatter within the party starts to get louder. And with the Washington Post headline from this morning that says Obama tells allies Biden needs to seriously consider his viability, it seems more and more like the people that could make a change happen are starting to leak out that they're considering that change.
And I want to point this out too. One of the weirdest things, because she's in our hotel, or at least kind of ran away to our hotel, is this head of the Secret Service being here. That happened yesterday too. That was exposed, and people are asking why, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, we saw earlier in the week. That she is here. So there's a lot to talk about tomorrow as well when it comes to the ACLJ's work on getting to the bottom of how that occurred and the failures that occurred by the Secret Service and those whose single job it is to protect President Trump, to make sure those who wish to do him harm don't have a clear line of sight to shoot at him with a rifle and hit him. I mean, and just, millimeters away from taking his life. So we will be back tomorrow with all the analysis about what occurs this evening at the Republican National Convention, and of course this major speech by President Trump. But don't forget, the ACLJ is not just talking about these issues. FOIA going out today to the Secret Service to get to the bottom of this issue. Support our work. Double the impact of your donation. Donate today. We need your support at aclj.org.